Okay, great.
Okay.
So, what was I saying? So, well, and part of it is just like, it's kind of like, it's super, like, and with all the feedback, it's tricky because I'm like, sometimes it seems like people are just writing this stuff so that there's like a directive sense, but then with some of them, it's like, I just want to make sure that because Mike started reading some of these and he was like, I don't know how I'm going to communicate this with sound.
Oh yeah, and I should have said something, but it was like by the time I was getting like I was pushing out the first draft,
Yeah.
I didn't have time to like make annotated notes to be like, well, just so you know, like this is not going to be like this. This
Totally.
is just gonna. So I just was like, take it at face value, and we'll go over that stuff later. But essentially, there was way more like all the action stuff and even descriptive stuff around facial this and that or whatever, tone and stuff. Like that stuff that won't even maybe see the light of day when it comes to the audio.
Yeah.
But for me, I had to like
No, I think
I
it's
had
great.
to know what it was gonna be like in order to even like abbreviate them later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that made sense for me to do it that way, and I'm not used to working like as you were saying, like probably a lot of folks like spatially. For me, it was about what was gonna happen at what gate. And what was going to be said.
Yeah.
You know, that was the main thing I wanted to get out. And then with the music direction, you'll see that like some of the audio cues are kind of fully fleshed out, and some I just like didn't have time to get to.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of like, you know, what would really kind of illustrate certain things clearly, as opposed to what needed to be revised to be reinterpreted visually through audio, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely recognize there was a lot to be doing, but like I do imagine.
Like walking around.
Like people walking around, because you could like, as she kind of investigates, like there'd be like this graffiti poem or whatever on the side of the obelisk, you could walk around it, you know, and I imagine, and you were right, that like, I do imagine things kind of being echoed through the audio track, like things that she reads aloud or sees in the landscape that become part of like, I don't know, kind of like a mantra that gets repeated through the audio track, so that certain like elements of the story that are important to remember are kind of carried with the user as they walk through the trail, kind of as an echo of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So she would be reading it, and then I imagine, and I do know Ursula, you know, so she's someone who I've imagined as a part of the Graffiti in the Grass world forever. So I imagine that, you know, hopefully, like that's something she'll be willing to do. But if not, like someone like her, you know, but like, I also think that I can totally rework some of the stuff so where instead of her walking, like instead of standing still and recalling stuff, she can be recalling it like almost like, so take the cantina, which was a long exchange, right? So what could happen there?
And is this the first place she stops, or is that the
No, there's another one up
okay.
here.
Cool.
And that is about halfway between the gates and, you know what I mean? And that's kind of like how I framed it.
Yeah.
But let me check this one real quick, because the other ones added this placard, and I wonder what this one says. But this is not there. Now that's just Neil Swimming in the river. That's not. That's just like a phrase. I think that's it. But the other one kind of has the one where I want people to stop.
Yeah.
Has like a moon phase thing, which is totally cool. It bases the moon based on the months, like July is thunder moon.
Oh, cool.
January is wolf moon. Stuff like that. So that's cool. But what I was saying is that I could, like the cantina scene, I could totally have her spend like literally like 2 minutes in that gate area.
Yeah.
But then as she walks, she's hitting the playback on the recorder to say, this is what I learned, like kind of replaying the conversation with the cantina waitress, but having that playback as she's walking.
And it's mostly just because my guess is that people will get itchy, and I just don't want them. Like for me, it's actually like mostly a functional directorial thing. Is I'm trying to anticipate what people will do.
Right.
And my guess is that, like, you know, like if they're out on a trail and they're standing still for too long, they're just going to start walking. And I just want to make sure that they don't miss any of your story.
No, that's true. And the thing is that in my mind, I was thinking that we wanted to build in places for them to stop. I had always kind of thought of it that way, so I kind of went. I just went there like with the stops, because also too, every time I walk this, like I would stop because they got all these places to sit, and it just feels like Well, it might be natural to sit here, and what I think is, this being a close gate, even though these are fairly close, like I think it's reinforcement for the user to hear another audio trigger immediately.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh yeah, I'm on the right trail.
Right.
You know what I mean? Okay,
Yeah.
like I'm going the right way. But this is a paved path, so like clearly they can't really go off it.
Yeah.
So I imagine they would stop here.
And I think it's so great because there's this object here which really invites them to like come check it out, look around.
And this is cool. I don't remember this being here before. I would have totally, because I was taking photos and I just definitely don't remember that.
That's so neat.
Yeah, and so, but it was very much in line with like, because it's all about this like cosmic event, like was the eclipse situation.
Yeah.
And so my friend who also does Galaxy Grills, I've been talking about this for a while too, so I know I can get her to do it.
That's awesome.
And it would be more of like a staged interview that would have real information,
Uh-huh.
but would be then used to cut up and like used for a soundbite.
Yeah.
You know, because same with Ross Ben. I'm doing an event here, like a screening of Attack the Block. It's like a sci-fi alien film at Bartram's Garden. And the interview, kind of like the pre-screening interview, is going to be with this dude, Ross Ben, who does these crystals, and he's into crop circles, and he wrote that Mystic Philadelphia book.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to him about it. I've run into him a couple times this summer to be like, hey, do you want to, you know, collaborate on X, Y, Z? You know, so he's open to doing an interview. So that's good.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that if a lot of the stuff that was going to be stationary is now a walking thing, I'm just trying to figure out, I might have to reorganize some of the like mixtape playback stuff because maybe I don't fit that in as much, but like there's times and places. Because the other thing I was wanting to ask is Michael, right?
Yeah.
To ask him about the audio in the sense of like, how long can a gate track last? Like, you know, like, does it last like from the time it's triggered, say at the obelisk to, or not even say it, so from the boat to all the way over, I mean, like, that might take 5 minutes.
And that's totally like part of what we'll build. And he threw me a couple of tracks that I have to listen to tomorrow, and then I'll probably bounce them over to you. He'll probably be building things that can loop. So they'll basically just like, they'll establish like some kind of core theme based on what you described, and then they'll just loop until you get to the next gate, and then they'll fade out.
Right. And so in some cases there might be a quicker loop, but I imagine like, for example, like I imagine in some cases where when they walk initially from a gate, like say that poem is playing, but then as like, and say that track from gate to gate is 5 minutes, maybe for the first 2 minutes it's that poem, and then it goes instrumental, and then it might like switch into something as you get closer to something.
And we can totally, so the way that the audio works is we can actually have two kinds of triggers. So we can have triggers that play until you hit another thing, or if you're like, I want this particular part of a song underneath something, we can also set it up so that the file triggers when it gets to a certain point in the narrative track. So you can...
Ooh, say that again.
So for example, let's say like you have something and somebody's like, I'll see you later, and you want to like boom, boom, boom. We can build in narrative, we can build in sound that triggers based off of something in the recorded dialogue or tracks to the location. So you have both those options available.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
No, okay, that's cool.
Because as soon as we started reading the stories, we're like, some of the music's going to want to be more like directly tied
to the what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, like score stuff.
Yeah.
As opposed to tracks that play in like walking tracks.
Because there are going to be sections of the text that are going to have narrative motion that wants to be specifically supported by the music.
Right. No. Exactly. But I figure like maybe when we get to the bridge, we can sit, because I literally went. Not exactly point by point, but I did just so that, because I know there's a lot of moving parts. I didn't want to miss anything because I know we're trying to get this right on this final draft. So maybe we can sit, because girl, I'm telling you, it's hot.
It is.
So maybe we can sit under the bridge area or something, or one of the next boats we find. I can go over those points with you so that like, at least you'll have knowledge of what those are. And then when we get to them when we're walking, we can kind of just refresh it. But that way I can lay it all out.
Yeah, sure.
So we don't have to do it on the spot.
Yeah.
But this obviously would be the gate.
So good.
Right. And so this is where I imagine the trigger would be. Because this has always been closed when I've gotten here, but it seems like a natural place. And you can see the bridge ahead, you know. But basically, you imagine that the wall's so tall that you don't really see the bridge until you get in. But one thing, what you were saying too, like reading stuff. So like when she reads labels or something, like definitely reading aloud, right? So that like the user can see what she's seeing as she's reading it aloud. And I try to do a bit of that, like, cause you know, like you said, oh, let me try to find my map. Like, you know, you kind of want to like have them talk out loud a lot,
Yeah.
just so people know what the heck's going on. Not that it always feels natural, but I know sometimes you just got to do that.
Well, and it's like mostly just, it's sort of like we only need the indicator if it's something that's only happening in action and you just really want to make sure the person knows what that object is.
Right, because it's important to the story somehow.
Yeah.
No, right, totally. So, and so for example, like you mentioned, like the gold Sharpie's not really important.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like, that was just like what I was doing in the moment as I was writing it out, because I am a visual person.
Yeah.
And it is a graphic novel, so like for me, thinking about it that way, but that's not essential. Like that doesn't have to find its way.
Well,
into
and it was,
audio.
you know, there was a part of me that's like, I just don't know, like maybe at the end, you know, Captain Ico comes and he's like
Right.
holding a gold Sharpie. I don't know.
Right. No, the gold Sharpie is not important. No, exactly. But it's hard to know like what really matters and what doesn't. But what was the other thing? I'll have to look at my notes because my brain's not functioning. But oh yeah, and so this is, I imagine, would be the natural place where like if there was like a concentration of the community, like where
Yeah.
activity would happen, it would be kind of like under here
Yeah.
in this general area. And so this is where I figured like, couldn't we get like canned busy stuff happening as opposed to like, you don't have to get everything live recording, like you don't have to record city people like for sure, like on your
No,
own.
and so this is the other process.